Sometimes things are just not as they seem, and they're not as simple as you think they might be. Today's guest is going to help you understand the significance of cultural intelligence and possibly how it'll help you to embrace your human diversity a little bit more. Stay tuned.
You're listening to The Brand Compass, conversations to navigate your way to building a brand fit for purpose and poised for success. Here's your host, 𝗘𝗣𝗜𝗦𝗢𝗏.
Hello there, my friend, and welcome back. If you're a returning listener or if you are new to me or the show, I'm 𝗘𝗣𝗜𝗦, I'm your host on this conversational journey. This is a place where we get together and we have these down-to-earth, practical conversations about how our personal brands meet the humans we serve. Today, we're adding to another conversation to my series that I have with people that come from across completely different fields of expertise, and I asked them, really, how are you faring, shaping a version of yourself that you are happy to share with the outside world, and of course what that looks and feels like for them. Today I have a guest who has a unique specialism that I really resonate with, being someone who's moved countries and experienced the unique challenges that come with living in a country that speaks the same language, but everything else is not the same. So let me give you a bit of an introduction to her, and then we can jump into our conversation. Sally Walker is a Korean executive coach and specializes in intercultural training. She works with clients at all levels, from graduate to CEO, both in the UK and internationally, across the spectrum of private, public, and charity sectors. She guest lectures on the master program at the University of Manchester on the topic of working as an intercultural coach and trainer. She is passionate about cultural intelligence and how we can all benefit from having a deeper understanding of how our cultural dynamics affect how we relate to others through and during our work. Outside of work, she enjoys traveling and getting to learn about new cultures in different countries and trying out new foods, interacting with locals, and reading books based in the countries that she visits. She's based in Manchester and she's mum to 2 grown-up sons. Welcome, Sally.
Hey, 𝗘𝗣𝗜𝗦, thank you very much. Nice to see you.
To kick things off, Sally, because you've got a fascinating story. I could have talked to you for hours in our prep call, but I think let's start at the beginning for people, because there's not very many people that I get to meet that actually find their sweet spot, the thing that they enjoy doing and they eventually become very good at such an early point in their career. So I'd love for you to share a little bit about that journey of yours, but also maybe some of those little, those points along that journey that brought you to specialism today. But before you do you want to explain for our listeners a little bit more about the specialism of yours, and then it'll make more sense to them as you're going through your story?
Yeah, really great. Thank you, 𝗘𝗣𝗜𝗦. Absolutely. So, I'm a career coach, but specialise in building cultural awareness in the clients that I work with, really to help them work more effectively nowadays. Our teams are much more diverse. People are working on, regional, global projects and so forth. So you're really, really valuable that they learn how to, better work and collaborate together. I also work with international individuals who are being sent abroad, by their home organisation to work in a new country. I support the individual, but also their families when they arrive, for instance, in the UK, to help them settle, learn about British values, learn how to make friends quickly so that they are the individual's more effectively at work. But the family as well settles more quickly. So these are individuals we would call expatriates, typically. So yes, that's and I also help people leave in the same way from the UK who are heading abroad, in the sort of reverse direction to settle abroad.
So let's track back some of your little story points. I mean, You start with your A-levels even, haven't you?
Absolutely. Yeah. Who would have thought? Who would have thought that, we often think, oh gosh, nothing I learned at school was useful, or I do anyway. But I have to say I took French at A-level. It was lots about literature, but it for me, I don't know, it was just a sort of an indication. I hadn't really travelled very much abroad at all at that point, but loved languages. Went to university and kept the French going as a subsidiary. I did English as my main topic. I was very homesick. I'll be very honest, 𝗘𝗣𝗜𝗦𝗢𝗏. It wasn't far away. It was 2 hours from where I lived, But that was a real, knock in terms of feeling pretty lonely at university. And that actually informs perhaps, again, some of the things I've done later on in my career as well. From there at university, I was really lucky to secure a first job as a graduate in human resources. So went all the way down to London, and my first job actually was in the relocation team of ExxonMobil. It was Esso UK at that point. And Esso was moving their head office from central London out to sort of a Surrey kind of base. And it was an unusual job for somebody to do, with little, prior experience, but it immediately put me in contact with helping people. So again, I think that's another ingredient that kind of
still like doing today.
Absolutely, exactly. And again, then, an opportunity arose to do another very different sort of HR job. Where I was leading the global mobility team. It was, in those days, it was called expatriate administration. So we know what expats, absolutely. And we know what expats are now, because I mentioned them earlier. So I was, heading up a two-person team where we were supporting all of the global expats arriving in the UK for Esso, or those that were leaving to go abroad. So it was, for me, it was the first opportunity to work international, exactly, which was amazing, and also made me realise, obviously, how challenging it can be, as you mentioned yourself, moving around the world, some of the cultural challenges. I remember spending, ages with one particular, it was a Japanese expatriate who'd arrived, who, again, nodded very politely through all of my introduction. And then at the end, when I was asking about, well, what was he planning to do next? It was quite obvious he really hadn't understood very much at all of what we discussed. It was those early learnings. Gosh, this is really, really challenging. From there, actually, I was in a really useful, good position, I think. We were devising a new expatriate program for graduates as a way of retaining talent across Europe. And I sort of realised we don't have anybody from HR on this program. It was an 18-month sort of exchange program. So I kind of put my hand up and volunteered. So I think, again, for anybody who's listening, be proactive, look out for opportunities for sure.
Hand up.
Absolutely, go for it, even if it's scary. But again, goes back to the point. I love French, so put my hand up to go to Paris. Got an exchange there, and the job itself was, for me, incredibly difficult. Not my thing at all. Manpower planning, Shelley, numbers, spreadsheets, all in French, very tricky. God. Yeah, exactly. So again, what I did there was to try and find something that would resonate more with my skill set. So they were launching an innovation project in France, in Esso, France. So I sort of put my hand up to head it for the HR department, and that enabled me to sort of draw on some of my training, sort of abilities, I suppose, and to help the team. But again, it helped me really appreciate the challenge of living and working abroad. I was on my own, but I'd learned from university. I immediately got stuck in, joined a jazzercise class outside of work, threw myself into trying to speak French and, do all that I could on that front. I then deepened my cultural experience by leaving Esso eventually and joining GE, General Electric, at that point.
All these big brands, eh?
Yeah, exactly. Well, it was a big, complex company. My role was to head up an HR team across the Middle East, Africa, Central Eastern Europe. So again, the mix
of culturals.
Right? Yeah, exactly. And lots of customer meetings. So, where HR, I was working very closely with the head of international, customer meetings where we have no language in common. But I learned that smiling and trying to ask simple questions of people respectfully, showing curiosity was, really important.
Body language.
Absolutely, exactly. And then returning from that, I very much, I'd spent some time in the sort of background, I suppose, learning and gaining accreditations to become a coach. So eventually I resigned from GE, set up my own career and executive coaching business. And within a few months, my husband, or my ex-husband at that point then or now, got an assignment in Belgium, in
Of course he
Brussels.
did.
So I then became, exactly, so I became an expat spouse then, a partner. So
Another
again, I'm getting
experience.
all of this nice kind of broad experience, all sides of the kind of perspective. So yeah, learning to kind of, go to a new country, again, adapt, make new friends, but from a partner kind of point of view. Again, networking was really valuable in terms of finding opportunities to be self-employed there. And a former HR director put me in touch with a lovely company called Net Expat, whom I became an associate for, and who very quickly I started to deliver intercultural training for, as well as career coaching to help, again, expat partners who were arriving and who wanted to find work in Belgium themselves. So this was kind of the start of that intercultural work that I was talking about. And then, that's really continued the last 20 years, working, as I say, as an associate with individuals, and got a master's in intercultural communication recently from Manchester University, because I kind of wanted to get the academic piece as well, to make sure it's fully rounded. Yeah, that's right. And then finally an accreditation from the Cultural Intelligence Centre, to be able to debrief their CQ, as cultural intelligence is kind of known for short, CQ questionnaire, which again helps practically, with many of the individuals I'm working with, helps them kind of identify gaps maybe in their own cultural kind of awareness piece. So that's the journey, really.
Wow.
Shelley, language and love of travel, as you say.
Yes, but I think what's lovely is, you really have felt all of those points that you help people with from every single angle. And I think, you've really managed to understand how your clients feel, from their partners, probably from trying to set their children into, into schools and the communities as well. And the nightmare of administration of moving countries as well. So, I mean, to be honest, it doesn't surprise me with the type of work that you do, honestly. So, because since I've ever met you, and in every interaction we've had since, I feel like there's like this underlying, like, come on, let's go, sense about you, as well as being really alert and proactive. So you shared with me in our prep conversation, though, there's this reason why you have this sense of gutsiness at your core, if you don't mind sharing about it. I think it's one of your kind of core values, almost like your life principles that sits behind your personal brand of how people experience you. Can you share the story with us?
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, no, you're right. And I like that idea of values being kind of core principles. So yeah, early age, essentially at 17, my dad died. We hadn't had an easy relationship, Shelley. So, to be frank, it was almost a relief in some respects at that point. But that losing a parent at that young a stage, suddenly, I think big definitely, change, absolutely, and just made me realise, this is seize the day. You never know when life is going to change, and hence I think a little bit of that drive to kind of make the most of each day, make the most of opportunities that I've got. That definitely had a really strong impact. I think, from earlier experiences in life, I think I'd learned that I needed to be proactive. We don't always get what we want. And, I can remember even young examples, I think it was about 7, and I desperately wanted a dog. Parents, particularly my dad, was very much against that. So I thought, well, actually, I knew there were some neighbours opposite us. They lived in a big posh house, and I'd seen them with a dog. And I thought, well, I'm just going to go knock on the door and ask. I don't remember asking my parent. I don't remember asking whether I could do this. So well, I'm just going to go and do it. And of course, these lovely neighbours were really welcoming and were very happy for me to do that. But yeah, just that early sense of you've got to be proactive, but you've also got to be brave. And you've got to be ready for the unexpected in life. I think, and I think the third thing that I've also learned is that there have been moments in life when I've maybe had a little bit of a victim sort of mindset. I do miss the lack of having not having a parent, the possible support and protection and mentoring that particularly a father figure can bring you. Yeah, exactly.
Depending on the father.
Exactly. Well said. Absolutely. But, I can fall into it. Oh, woe is me. And I think definitely, I read, it's a book by 𝗧𝗛𝗜𝗦𝗢𝗧𝗦𝗛𝗘 called Manifest a few years ago. And something she says is that we should shift envy, so envy of other people and their situations, actually into inspiration. You know, what can you do, if not to get totally what you're envious of, maybe even just get partially what you envy in somebody else. So I've really, again, tried to adopt that and be perhaps more resourceful nowadays. I think that's another key principle, key value that I have, that I try and encourage my candidates, clients that I work with to embody that as well. Because again, when you go abroad, it's incredibly, you can feel really like, oh my God, it's the worst thing that's happened to me, particularly as an expat, you know, as a spouse, as a partner. Well. You haven't chosen this necessarily, you know, it can be really challenging.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, thanks for sharing that, Sally. I think,
Thank you.
You know, as like you say, such a young person at 17 to lose a parent and to actually resolve to take life by the horn, so to speak, it's pretty amazing. So not everybody comes away with that takeaway, but and today, knowing that you know, resolve along with the gifts of your strengths that you bring to your work, I hopefully you can acknowledge the difference you've made to, you know, hundreds of people. Just think of the ripple effects of the Sally effect, you know.
That's nice.
Okay, so that brings me to a little bit what I'd like to get your view on, because with the diversity of things you've had to manage, if you think of those early days of all those logistics and all the people that you've had to engage to help you to move people and settle people, and you would have come across specialists in different spaces and that who were very, very good at what they did, and some who were very, really not. You know, can you describe what you think a subject matter expert is? Someone who's, you know, obviously very good at what they do.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think they're good at what they do by the depth that they've got, you know, the body of knowledge, and, you know, also perhaps their sort of ability to kind of connect with other people in that sort of world as well. Nice. So a kind of depth of knowledge. I prefer, my definition would also be that they probably have a lived experience of what they are sort of talking about or advising on or coaching on, teaching on, and so on. And I think that does come through, you know, a period of time, doesn't it? A measure of time. You're not, I don't feel, an expert overnight. So yeah, those would be some of the ingredients that I would identify.
I would definitely agree with the time situation.
Yeah.
So I think what I want to get into is a little bit of the subject of what you're actually a specialist in. And as you know, I moved from Joburg at 22 to London, 2 weeks after graduating. And I had like some very specific experiences about that, which we can talk about offline, with that move. And then I moved then from London to Northampton at 30, right? And that was again another big change because, oh gosh, between city and, you know.
Yeah, that resonates.
Yeah. I think what I'd like to chat about is this kind of coaching and training that you do where it actually prepares people to get their heads around, you know, moving countries and then working in a country that's not their home country. And we talked a little bit about this in our prep session around this cultural intelligence piece that you do your work on. But I think I'd like to raise more awareness about it because I don't think people know that it exists if it doesn't affect them, right? So, and I feel like there's these two important sides. One, where companies need to realize the value of investing in people like you know, in order to, because as we know, the better people settle in, the less chance they are to leave and up sticks, right? And then also for the employees, you know, on the other side, to actually realize and accept that, you know, this is very, very helpful training and information framework that will help them significantly. So can you talk a little bit about, you know, these international moves and what you've experienced with people?
Yeah, no, thank you, Shelley. No, I think you're right. I mean, there is a huge body of research to demonstrate that, you know, when expats move abroad, if the family isn't happy, it doesn't matter if the expat's doing really well at work, if the family isn't happy, that will probably cause the assignment to fail and for the family and the individual to have to return home too soon. So you're right. It's incredibly important. So yeah, in the international sort of move scenario, there it's about, you know, helping individuals think about what the parent company culture is like and what the differences might be from wherever they're leaving to the country, obviously, that they're going to. You know, some of the similarities or differences in communication style, you know, direct or indirect style, whether they're moving to a more hierarchical kind of environment or not. But, you know, also whether they're going to be working with a different sort of generational mix of colleagues. You know, when I went to 𝗧𝗛𝗜𝗦𝗢𝗏, in the HR department, my colleagues were 20, 30 years much older than I was,
Senior.
which was quite different to the environment I had left, from the same company, but again, a different environment abroad. I think our teams are generally, work teams are becoming much more diverse, aren't they? Mixes of nationalities, but also, mixes of kind of professional experience or education experience, and having the ability to be able to adapt the way that you communicate and collaborate with individuals with those different backgrounds, is incredibly valuable. So yeah, that's for me. That's kind of where it all starts from. And yeah, then we can talk a bit more about cultural awareness and what it is, if that's useful.
Yeah, I think maybe do. I think do, just if you want to expand a little bit on that. I
Sure.
think because people don't, because I speak English when I came over,
Yeah.
you think, oh, it's much easier to just move to a country
Yeah.
where they
Yeah.
speak
Yeah.
English.
Actually, sorry, go ahead.
No. There are only obvious examples for people, and people laugh now. My English friends laugh because they didn't quite cotton on to this. It's like I said, well, look, I don't do pub quizzes, for example, because I don't get it. And all your cultural references as English, TV, we were brought up on American TV in South Africa. So we were a different sense of humor. We're not as, I don't know, what do you call it? It's more satirical here.
It's more ironic, sarcastic. It's very indirect humour, isn't it?
And sometimes
Absolutely.
really mean,
Oh, yeah.
English, like my husband is Swedish and he's had a similar thing. They also brought up on American TV. So our sense of humor is similar.
Yeah.
But he struggles just in his tennis communities or his social communities because the boys like to banter, but sometimes the banter's really mean.
Really?
And we're like,
Absolutely.
why are they being so horrible? I don't understand. It's so different, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. No, those are lovely examples because, and often I find, and I think my colleagues in the intercultural world find, that people really, really underestimate when they are moving to another, if they're native English speakers themselves, moving to America or Australia or wherever, they think, oh, that's going to be the easiest move. But actually the culture behind those countries is very different. So the language may be similar, although there are nuances, as we know, certain things. They think, what's the somebody coming from America to the UK, the boot of the car, it's the trunk,
Exactly.
There are some language differences, but it's more importantly, actually, it's the culture that actually is different. And people are often really shocked by that, even more so because they expect if they go to a country where they're going to have to learn the language, they appreciate that, okay, that's going to be culturally different. So that's a really it's often where the biggest challenges come, English to English speaking countries. So it really starts, for me, it starts with building awareness for somebody. So as you mentioned, recognizing the value in having some cultural intelligence, cultural awareness training preparation before you actually even leave your home country is super important. It doesn't, in my experience, it doesn't prevent culture shock happening, but at least it starts to make you alert and aware to what is it going to feel like, what might be some of the cultural differences. As I say, you've already mentioned one around, Britain is a very indirect communication, has a very indirect communication style. Typically, again, we've got to be pretty careful not to stereotype. So not all British people, not all English people are direct, indirect communicators, but typically, because we prefer politeness, we try to avoid confrontation, don't we?
Exactly.
Whereas, other countries have a much more direct style. So
and they just say it as it is.
Exactly, they do. So starts with prep before even leaving and trying to anticipate what might be the case in the new country, for sure.
I was just thinking now, I know we've talked about this, but I wasn't necessarily going to bring it up today, but I feel like we should now, is how do you feel like with all of the stuff that you've learned about this need for this cultural intelligence, do you think it's shifted anything for you about how you express yourself? So I suppose it is part of that personal brand of your own, because as a self-employed coach, that is very important. Your reputation's important, how you treat people's important.
Well said.
Do you feel like it's shaped you more, sharpened you more, knowing all of this stuff? Because you know a hell of a lot more than a lot of us do. I mean, You must be a superhuman, really.
No, not
they can deal with aliens when they arrive.
Not at all. No. But I mean, you know, I hope it has informed the way that I welcome people to, you know, working with me. But you know, again, socially, I hope it has informed the way that I interact with people. I think, you know, cultural intelligence, cultural awareness, whatever label we want to give it, it's about first and foremost being empathetic, trying to put yourself into the experience, the shoes of somebody else. So I think, you know, I definitely try to do that. I try to suspend judgment. Again, it's very easy to sort of label certain people or to have expectations, or you're coming from X country, you're going to be like that. So again, absolutely try and suspend that. Or again, remembering that culture is much broader than just the country we've come from. So, you know, if you're working with colleagues with different religious backgrounds or political backgrounds, trying to suspend, you know, that judgment and understand things from their perspective, ask good open questions. You know, again, that links with hopefully with my coaching skills, but that is also a really strong part of building cultural awareness.
I've just thought of it. It's gonna freak you out when I share this example. Years ago, when I went self-employed, I did do a coaching. I think everybody does some kind of level of, I'm going to help other people not hate their jobs. I quickly got over that and moved on to something else. But I did do a little bit of like a coaching diploma. And there was a coach on that diploma course that was obviously, you know, kind of assessing you. You know, you do a practice session with them and they do. And she gave feedback of, and bearing in mind she was, you know, highly qualified, highly experienced. So this is a lesson for the listeners as well. But in her feedback to me, because obviously they're supposed to feedback on where you can do better, or if you didn't pass, why didn't you pass? You know, those kinds of things. And she said in there, you know, most Australians do actually struggle with this bit where they, you know, assume blah, 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 blah. And I was like, okay, but if I'm South African, so I thought, you've really pissed me off now.
Yes, interesting.
Because exactly what you just said, as soon as you kind of presume, and then actually she got it wrong.
Exactly. Absolutely.
Well, I'm
really
Antipodean, but I'm not Australian. I was so angry. And then I completely dismissed her experience and her professional, because I was like, oh, if you've done that with me, who else have you, you know, because as a coach, you have a very big responsibility with people's mindset and what they think of themselves and how they carry themselves into, you know. So, I don't know.
No, really good. No, it's a super example. No, it is. And I think it's interesting that I think in the workplace generally, it's becoming more of a challenge for individuals, for leaders, needing to be, you know, very sensitive to, you know, to the way that they build their teams and they collaborate with each other. So yes, you know, on the one hand, we need to be careful of and sensitive and be respectful and not make any assumptions. Equally, I think there is something about respectful cultural curiosity of other people and asking open questions, being interested in interested in other people, and you know, even if you're talking to another British person. I mean, again, this is where culture,
regional differences,
differences, and again, not just that, but again, differences. We might not have been educated in the same way. We might have different kind of family backgrounds. All of that really affects our cultural identity. So, just planning ahead, I think, always being mindful when you're going into meetings. You know, thinking, okay, what might be some of the obviously similarities. We're always, you know, looking for common ground, you know, and sharing a little bit about yourself really helps to do that, Shelley. You know, talking about, I mean, you mentioned in my intro, you know, what do I love doing outside of work? I often include that, you know, professionally. When I'm introducing myself, I'll mention about my boys, I'll mention about travel, because often then whoever I'm working, I'm also interested in travel. And we start with common ground and then we move on to perhaps, where might be, rapport, but where might some of the differences be between us. But it makes it easier to kind of work on those. So I think, that element of sharing a bit about yourself, possibly being a little bit vulnerable. So if you are working, you know, in an environment where there are different languages at play, if you can ask somebody, you know, if you learn a few words and you're practicing, showing a bit of humility and vulnerability, again, is, you know, genuinely done, as long as you're not trying to make yourself into something that you are not. I think it's getting a middle way, isn't it? And adapting culturally, but not necessarily losing your your kind of individual approach as well. That makes sense.
No, you're right. No, you're right. You're right. Oh, we've come to the end of our time, Sally.
I know, gosh.
It's gone so quickly. Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking the time to chat to us today, and I've really valued all the little bits of, I really resonate with a lot of the struggles that you've had to feel yourself, as well as what you do with your clients as well. I mean, like I said, I was surprised with going English to English, and it was not the same. So I'm really inspired also by those levels of knowledge that, so you've had that measure of time we've talked about, and you keep layering that knowledge, and I think all your qualifications, all these nice moving marbles within that framework of that knowledge as well, which is great, and your lived experience. So you are ticking all the boxes of your definition, so we can safely call you one subject matter expert. So if anybody listening today, Sally, would like to know more about you or would like to connect with you, where's the best place for them to do that?
I've got a website, 𝗧𝗛𝗜𝗦𝗢𝗗𝗘.com. So I think you're probably going to maybe include that, Shelley, in the notes. Lovely. And LinkedIn as well. I'm pretty active there. I've got a large network. Would love to connect with you listeners, and reach out to me, message me if I can help further. Then super happy to do that.
Oh, lovely. I'll pop that all, like I say, in the show notes. That's great. Thanks a lot, Sally.
Thank you so much. Take care. Thanks. That was great. Thank you. Bye-bye.
And that's it for this episode, folks. Thank you so much for joining us. So, what did you think about that? I love the idea that we all need to have cultural intelligence. I remember the days when the only time I felt like this was a thing was when you did want to work in Japan. And it was super important to know how to be respectful because business was done so differently in that country. But then again, I was only in my 20s. I hadn't started traveling yet. And I was based in a country that basically had sanctions, international sanctions for much of my upbringing. So I had a very narrow view, but at least I was aware. Today, we've got such a complicated mix of cultures and generations working alongside each other, especially here in the UK and Europe. And I'm sure wherever you're listening to today, you may be feeling the same. Now, Sally's reminded me that culture is complex. We are influenced not only by the country's values that we were brought up in, but our cultural identity is also shaped by our gender, religion, education, and working experiences, as well as our political and social interests as we get older. I hope if you take only one thing away from Sally's sharing today, it's that being yourself and embracing much of your own human diversity is what will not only help you to be understood by others, but it will also help you to feel more settled and happier in your day-to-day. And the flip side to this, of course, is for you to be open to the others around you benefiting from doing the same for themselves. I could have done with more work colleagues understanding more of my home country back in the early 2000s and not asking me silly questions like, how come I spoke such good English? Who do you know who could do with hearing this conversation and Sally's story today? Go on, share this episode. You know you want to. Until next time, my friends, stay strong, believe you have value, and make good brand decisions.
Thank you for listening to The Brand Compass. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to share it with your entrepreneurial friends and help them make good brand decisions. Until next time, let's keep the conversation going at 𝗧𝗛𝗜𝗦𝗢𝗓.com.